Okay, welcome everybody. David Wilson here. We have town historian John Demmer is with us, and Nick Van Dorn from the library is moderating tonight for us and helping us out with all this. So we appreciate everybody coming together. And this is going to be a fun night. We originally did this show live back in 2019 at the library. And it was really, we had over 100 people there. And it's a movie from 1942 that was made in Nutley by Nutley people for Nutley people. And rather than just show the movie, which is about an hour in length, so make sure that when you decide you want to start watching this, that you allow enough time for yourself, or you can stop it and start again. But we wanted to have an introduction because we found a lot of information on the making of this and all that went into screening it. And we feel that it gives you a more in-depth understanding of how this movie came to be. And you can appreciate a lot more of the movie and things that are in it, certain scenes that you're going to see, people you're going to see. It's just an amazing hour of 1942 Nutley, all made all throughout the town. So you're really going to enjoy it. It moves a little fast because they crammed a lot of things into the movie to get it out to everyone and get the message out. But it's really, really enjoyable. And you're probably going to want to watch it a few times to just redo some of the scenes and review some of the people. You may have a relative or a friend or distant relative that you're going to see in the movie. So there's no music that was with the original. It was just a soundtrack that was like narrated at the school. So what we've done is we added a soundtrack to it of period music. And so it's a silent movie, but it has a lot of small printed panels that will pop up and you'll be able to see and read about what's actually going on in that particular scene. So originally this movie, when it was made, it disappeared for many, many years after it was shown for the first year or two in Nutley and surrounding towns. And then what happened, somehow it ended up out west. And around 1988, it was returned to the fire department. And it came into our possession. The person realized it was historical and wanted to come back to Nutley. So I was able to take it over to, we're so fortunate to have Bob Lee in town of the Essex Film Club, who was a historian of old films and knew exactly what this movie was, how to care for it. It was a 16 millimeter type film, and he knew how to preserve it, and he knew how to make copies of it at the time because it was still in pretty good condition at that time. So he was able to make positive copies of it and all, and ensure that we would have this available for everyone to enjoy over the years. And then the movie was shown in 2002. The town had a 100th anniversary down in the Nitas in the park, and it was presented down there as a backdrop. And then it just disappeared. Like we couldn't find it for a long time. Nobody really had the right CDs. It wasn't really a good quality. And so it was just kind of lost for a while. And we were able to find it in 2019. I found it at a studio here in town, the fellow who got copied it, which was kind of after we like, yeah, okay, of course, that's where it was. He just didn't know where to put it after that. So we took it back and we worked with Donnie Lee, who's Bob Lee's son now. Bob has passed in the time since we originally had this movie. So Donnie was able to, with his expertise and his friends, was able to take this movie and restore it to the proper speed so that we're able to watch it now, so that all the screens are clear on it, the printing is clear, you have time to read it, and it's really a professional type work that he did on this. So it's all clearer now, the color's right, so it's really, really enjoyable now, and you can get so much more out of it from the original one that we showed a long time ago. So if you go on to the advance the screen, Nick. So this is kind of really what we talked about just now, that, Bob Lee helping us out, at the Essex Film Club. We actually had VHS copies of it originally, and those were not really good at all, but that was what state of the art was back then in the late 80s. And then we were able to digitize it later on, and it became much, much better now. So you can go on to the next slide, Nick. So John, if you want to take over from here.
Sure. The film was conceived as a method of promoting defense work in Nutley. You have to remember, at this point in time, 1942, we were pretty much into the heart of the war, and many soldiers from Nutley had gone overseas, and there were people at home who wanted to do things and who wanted to be a part of the war effort. So this film was conceived to to kind of show what you could do. And ideally, initially, it was conceived as something for, specifically for Nutley, but this ended up being shown in many other towns and many other places. The filmmakers were Eugene Ingram and Eugene White, who were sort of amateur filmmakers, and it was sort of their concept originally to make this film. And they incorporated the help of two Nutley citizens, Charles McCarthy, who was he was a publicity person for 20th Century Fox and Paramount, and Nugent Freeman. Both of these were Nutley men, and Nugent was pretty much the guy who wrote wrote the whole script and decided what was going to be on film. The cost was only $250, which most of that was put up by the Defense Committee, Defense Council, and any other personal expenses had to be covered out of pocket. So it's really not a huge expenditure. They shot over 3,200 feet of film to get the final 1,600 feet that you will see. There was supposed to be, for the premiere of this, there was supposed to be, the film was going to show on 3 nights. It was going to show in the middle school, which for us is the middle school, but it was the high school then. On premiere night, it rained so heavily that the parade that was supposed to step off at 7 o'clock had to be canceled. And what's funny about the parade is when they mention this parade, they talk about how it will only be a mile and three quarters so that women could participate in it, which I found to just be a very comical part of it. But I guess, women had all high heels back then, so you have to forgive that. But that was canceled. So on the premiere night at what is now the middle school, which was the high school then, they were going to show this, and they were going to do a test run. And about 45 minutes before everyone was supposed to see this, they started to do a test run. The projector doesn't work. So now they have a potential audience of 850 people could fit in that venue. I think 650 showed for the first night. A lot didn't show because of the rain. But now they needed a projector. So some people immediately ran over to Washington School to try to secure one. And they went as far as to try to break the window and door to the projection booth that I assume Washington School had, to no avail. So finally, they had to use an inappropriate projector that was at the high school. So the film, which was supposed to be about a 60-minute run, ran in 45 minutes. So it ran extremely fast, extremely fuzzy, but they did get to show it. The parade that was supposed to happen on the first night, which I believe was September 9th, did happen on September 10th with an attendance of over 900 people in the parade. And I think an audience of 800 got to see it on the second night. What was also interesting about that is that Governor Edison, Thomas Edison's son, was invited, but he did not show. But there were some dignitaries from other towns and from other places. And as mentioned, I found news articles afterwards that did show that this film was then thought to be something special. It was sort of the first of its kind. So it was taken around to other towns and shown at other venues. So it's pretty unique that we sort of had this thought to do this, and we initiated it. And it's wonderful to see. You're going to see so many locations around town. So many people were involved. Hundreds of people were involved in Nutley in the making of this, as far as background and all that. And it's really special in that sense. So I think, what's our next slide?
Advanced slide.
So they were having 2 shows for adults, and there was 1 show that was going to be specifically for children. I'm not sure exactly what may have been edited out of that, but there were 3 shows on the 9th, the 10th, and September 11th, oddly enough. and it was very well received. And there's many scenes that you'll see around town where you'll be able to identify exactly where they are, and we're going to go through some of those as we get further along in this project.
Right, we're not going to talk during the presentation of the movie, just like we did not on the night of live, because we don't want to distract people, because it takes a focus to really watch this movie, because you're looking at so much, and we don't want us to be chattering in the background.
No, we're gonna pre-mention some items that were done in a flyer that was for it. I think that's coming up soon too.
Yeah.
Could you advance one more time? All right, so this is a Nutley Defense Council booklet. And the Nutley Defense Council was basically, again, a way to, there was a lot of this, I always say this about World War II, is that there was an extreme amount of patriotism. I don't think there was another time before or even since, sadly enough, where there was as much patriotism in town, in America, where if someone wasn't doing something, they didn't feel right about it. And there were many people who volunteered that were underage to go to war, because everyone was very committed to the values that we were trying to defend. And so the Defense Council was set up, and this is just a booklet that they had put out. Shows who the committee members are, and it talked a little bit about what the Defense Council was.
Right, and if I could chime in on that. So this booklet, we found this kind of by accident. We were in the museum basement. I was walking around with John Simcoe, and this booklet was just laying on one of the shelves out in the open, like waiting to be found. And it's like, wow, this was printed and given out to every house in Nutley. So everybody had a list of everything. If you notice, they have the addresses of everyone, their home addresses. That was very common back in that. So you could go see your neighbor, go talk to them, go volunteer. And think about that, Pearl Harbor was December 1941. And by April 42, they had this booklet printed, and they were well into making the movie and all that. So they moved quick in Nutley. They were organized. They'd already thought about the Defense Council that was sort of in its infancy prior to Pearl Harbor, but then they started to really ratchet it up after that, found funding and reassigned some people to oversee it. And it's kind of equivalent now to civil defense or emergency management that we call it nowadays, but this was the original like civil defense group. And they just had, if you look at all the different categories, they had an amazing amount of complexity to their operation. Next slide, Nick. So that's just a cover of the book, kind of artwork. And a lot of the artwork was done locally too, or by people from the Star Ledger. There's an artist with the Newark Star Ledger, which was a local paper back then. And they helped to put the pictures in there. Next slide, Nick. And then this was something we found. Social media has been a good source of finding little tidbits to round out our presentations when we do them. So this showed up on social media a couple of years ago, right after we did the show. This was, everybody got a little ID card back then. And this fellow, William Faldoot, was a air raid warden. In Nutley, we had 1,200 air wardens alone. That's how many people volunteered to be on these different committees in town. So if you were, either you were away in the military, either training or overseas, or you were on a defense council. There was no other choice for people back then. Next slide, Nick. John, you can.
No, this is interesting because this was part of a large, very large one-page ad in the Nutley Sun that Dave actually had. Your father had saved this, correct, Dave?
Yes, I think the ad's going to come up. It must be out of sequence here, but there's a picture of the ad.
Yeah.
I was working over at Dad's house, helping him get rid of his Lionel trains. And in one of the boxes for packing, there was a 1942 newspaper. Now, remember, this was 2 months into us planning this program. So it's like, talk about serendipity. I'm working on a project helping Dad, and this newspaper just falls out of this box. I open it up, and I got goosebumps and chills and everything. And in there was a full-page ad for the world premiere of this movie. And I'm thinking, how great is this? Like, probably doesn't exist anywhere else as a newspaper. And I was able to go to a printer, and we had it expanded and copied there. But it had everything that we did not know, was all all the loose ends were tied up, and we found a lot of things in this article, so it helped us. We have like the whole picture to go with this movie now after some research and some total luck in finding things. Okay, John.
So this is a section of that paper, which we'll see shortly. And what's nice about it, it sort of gives you the bullet points, which are nice to go through some of them, of what you're going to see in this film. So not only were they saying, here's a film that we've made, we want you to see it, but here's some of the things you're going to see it in. And just to read a few, you could see Nutley boys inducted into the draft and going away to war. The Nutley Red Cross women at work. What happens when an incident test is held by the defense services. And if you look through all these, there's a lot of things that are telling you what to do in very specific circumstances. And it's very interesting to see some of the circumstances that will be coming up in this film, things that you may not have thought of, things that you don't necessarily think of that, because they weren't just talking about fighting overseas. There was potential and talk about what if the war came to us? What would you do if you were attacked here? Dave, are there any in particular I know as a fireman, you might want to mention some of these.
Oh, the thrilling jump into a fire net. Years ago we had fire nets with, we jump out the window and the fireman would catch you in a net. We don't do that anymore. But you're actually going to see an actual fellow jumping out of a second floor window or off a roof, and the fireman catching him in the net. So it's kind of really cool stuff in there. The British War Relief, for those of you with a really keen eye, they're going to show the building where the British War Relief activities occurred, and they collected clothing and different things. That was in the old building, Brazil's gift shop at Vrion and Franklin, which is now a bank there. But for those with a really old Nutley keen eye, you'll see a little bit of that building there. And just the scenes that are around town that you're going to find. Some of the buildings now no longer exist. The emergency hospital was in a house over on Highfield Lane that you're not going to see that house anymore because it doesn't exist. And then you're going to see some old fire apparatus, old police apparatus. You're going to see people directing traffic, and you're going to see a lot of old Nutley names. The old politicians that were involved, the old police chiefs, fire chiefs. People who really were, really made the town back in those days. They were really, really big. The Red Cross was huge back then. We're going to see the ladies working on a car, learning how to be mechanics and working on a carburetor. It's kind of fun. Let's see the next screen.
Yeah, let's see the next.
Because this is just kind of what we've been talking about. This is, again, from that poster. And it talks about how the idea was born. So we'll just leave that up there for a minute or two, give people a chance to read it. But there were over 4,000 people of Nutley were in the cast. And we think, because there's going to be a lot of marching. You're going to see that was big back then. They're marching in the Park Oval, marching on Franklin Avenue. That was a big thing for esprit de corps of all the different agencies that were involved. Everybody had uniforms. You're going to see very few people in street clothes, or if they're in street clothes, they're dressed up with a jacket and tie. So it's people got into it back then, and they had the armbands on, the special helmets. Parts of it you may find a little funny the way they dance around a little bit, but lots of marching.
And remember, again, as Dave was saying, how fast this was put together. It's pretty much 8 months from the time of conception to the time the film was being shown to get all of this organization done, to get all these people equipped and ready. Pretty impressive. I'm not sure you could do anything on that large a scale anymore, even with social media. It's pretty impressive for 1942.
Next slide.
So these are some of the people involved in making it. I actually do not remember who was who in this, but I believe Nugent Freeman is one of them, and I think Charles is also there. And they're just sort of, this is a stage shot of them reviewing the film on the reel that was put in the Nutley Sun. This was pre-publicized for several weeks prior to it coming out. There was talk about it, I think, a month or so before it had shown, and then a couple of weeks before they were getting ready. They were giving the agenda and hoping that they get the governor to come. So this was just one of the publicity photos of some of the people involved in the actual writing and filming of the material.
Next slide.
You talk about trolleys. Dave.
So this is one of the only picture we've ever found of an operating trolley bus or an all-service vehicle operating in Nutley on Franklin Avenue. So this, you'll see that it has little poles on top. This is a hybrid bus. These started in around 1938. They started service in Nutley. So 42, they were still operating. The trolley tracks are gone. It's just a rubber tire bus with a gas engine in the back and then electric overhead pickups. So this is on Franklin Avenue, right in front of, just approaching Center Street. So it's going southbound on Franklin, getting ready to make a left to go east on Center Street, right on the four corners there. So just a great old shot. Again, the only picture, and this picture wasn't even viewable in the old format that we had the movie in. So when they restored this, we were able to capture a screenshot and get this really great, only picture we've ever located of an all service vehicle operating within the township as a Broadline trolleys. I don't think there's anything after that. Maybe one more, Nick.
Where's the there? Yeah, there's the paper.
Okay. So this is the ad that we found. It was folded up, but it was still in pretty good shape. And I was able to unfold it very carefully. And I went to a printer friend of mine, and he saw my excitement, and he dropped what he was doing, assigned a girl to me, and she was able to photograph it, because we couldn't put it through a scanner or anything because it was too fragile for that. So we figured out a way to do it, and we got like pretty good copy on it. And then we made that into, enlarged it. But it has all the information about when it premiered, and we showed you the little panels before, what to see in the movie. We went through that, and it was a free event. And it was just amazing to just find all this. Even the articles that we showed with the men in the movies, that was all in that same newspaper. So it was like gold to find this one particular newspaper. All right, next slide, Nick. It's yours, John.
Okay, so this is a shot of the Franklin Theater, which coincidentally Dave and I will be doing a live in-person presentation on the Franklin Theater, postponed due to COVID, refused to be done on Zoom by me, because I want to see everybody's faces, because I think the Franklin is one of the most talked about subjects in town, one of the biggest losses we've ever had. I think anyone who comes to see this will have something to say about it. This shot here is very early. What did we date this to? We dated it off the film, didn't we?
This is from the film.
Right. So this is 1942.
Yes.
42 shot here, and it's just a terrific little tie-in between tonight's event and the upcoming one. But this again is something you're going to see. You're going to watch this Nutley at War several times, because you're going to recognize so many things, and they're going to go by you, and you're going to go, wait, I kind of know where that is, or I think I know who that is. So it's a wonderful film. It's another treasure, almost like the 1918 film that was this close to being lost forever. And the fact that it exists now, and that it's protected, and that it's saved, and that it's going to be digitally kept, and potentially never able to be lost again, is a wonderful thing, because of images like this and the ones that you will see throughout the whole 1942 film.
Right, you're going to see pictures of the mud hole, a winter scene from the mud hole, people ice skating. You're going to see a steam train coming into the High Street Railroad Station. Very hard to find those pictures. But this is actually a moving picture of that, and passengers waiting for the train to go over to Jersey City. And all the schools, many of the churches in town, so some of the parks. It's just incredible what you're going to see in this. So we hope you enjoy it. We don't want to keep talking all night here, because we want you to spend some time now. And again, it's going to be, the film runs about an hour. So when Nick puts this all together, make sure you budget your time, and you're going to enjoy it, and get everybody together, get it on a big screen if you can play it through your TV. It's going to be on the YouTube channel, so you should be able to, on your smart TV, to bring that up on a larger screen so you can really, really enjoy it. Much too important a film to watch on your phone.
We're going to play it at the correct speed.
Yes. Okay, that's it, Nick. Thank you very much for administering all this for us, and making it all happen.
Thank you. Thank you both gentlemen for doing this, and it's going to be good to have it online too. Everybody can see it.
Thank you.